Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Acosphere first ever podcast. We are so blessed, honored, and happy to welcome an amazing individual. And as I say amazing, I have goosebumps. You will understand why. The individual is our good friend, Lurata Lyon. Welcome.
Thank you, Gilles. Thanks for having me. Such a pleasure, actually. I feel honored to be the first one on the podcast. This is incredible, guys. It's only up from here.
And you remember that I said, when the right time comes, we'll have an opportunity to have this conversation.
I really, really did. And it's funny, the gut feeling thing, isn't it? We will talk about it maybe in a minute. Maybe we'll touch base on it. But I remember it so vividly, Gilles saying to me, Lurata, when the right time comes, we will do a talk. And lo and behold, look at me. I'm in Senegal, everybody.
Yeah, and that's another one thing that you wanted, but let me do the introductions properly. Lurata Lyon is an amazing motivational speaker, author of the book Unbroken. We'll come to that book in a minute. Surviving human trafficking, mindset and presentation skills coach. Lurata is a survivor of civil war in the former Yugoslavia, having endured trauma of being held captive, not once but twice, suffering torture and abuse. But she's one of the very lucky one, ladies and gentlemen, because she managed to escape to the United Kingdom. The rest of the story we'll be sharing with Lurata from her own mouth. Welcome again. So, Lurata, in a few words, who are you and what is your story?
Oh gosh, Gilles, when you just asked that question, something that's never come to mind. I'm still that little girl, that 17-year-old, still deep inside. I think she lives in me, because when I was 17, it's when I got taken by human trafficking and sex trafficking during the war in Yugoslavia. And who I am now is because of that little girl, because of that little 17-year-old, because of her strength. And today, as an author, I have the privilege of saying an author. I don't know if I wanted to do this kind of book, but it just happened, so I did it. I think it was the right time to speak up. But I am, above everything, I am a mother. And I'm a good friend, I'm a good human being, and I think these go hand in hand when it comes to my beliefs. And so being a coach and all of that, it's all additional stuff that my life, the very things that I just mentioned before, my kids and all of this, that taught me how to be a better coach. They taught me, I think my kids taught me more communication than any public speaking in the world. And so, yeah, today I'd love to share my story with you, Gilles, and your listeners, and it's a pleasure, really. But if I may say, I am now at an age, and don't guess my age, but when this happened, I was 17 and moved to the UK. I got rescued and sent to the UK as a political child refugee. And that was really tough because I went from a Muslim background. I was raised as a Muslim. A young 17-year-old that got kidnapped and by human trafficking and organ harvesting, and then got imprisoned for 6 months and been held in a small little room, daily abused, mentally, physically, sexually, to then giving up on everything and never believing that I was going to make it through, to literally regaining my strength while I was still buried in this small little place, very small dark room, finding the inner strength to carry on for the love of my parents, for the love that I had an obligation to make it through for them. And so coming to the UK and having to adopt to such a fast-moving pace city and different culture, completely different for what I knew, to literally finding my ways. And most of all, I think what was a highlight for me to get to the UK is learning the language from scratch, and also the healing process that I had to do post escaping the kidnapping. And I let Gilles ask all the lovely questions because I don't want to cover them all by myself. I can talk forever.
So let's get right to the core of it. When this dramatic event in your life happened, you said you were just 17, and at the time, where you lived was still called Yugoslavia.
Correct.
What actually happened?
Well, I think just to put some perspective with the viewers, as we see the war at the moment in Ukraine is an infliction of Russia and Ukraine. Whereas when we go back to the 90s, early 80s and 90s, it was a war that happened amongst us. So we were literally a country killing each other. And for the sake of religion, for the sake of power, and ultimately it was called ethnic cleansing. But really, was it ethnic cleansing or was it religious cleansing? My parents happened to live in a small little town which was predominantly Muslims. My dad was a doctor and my mum professor of languages. And we just happened to be in that triangle between the Macedonia, which we know now, Northern Macedonia, Kosovo, and then the rest of the Serbia. And so got singled out. It was going to be the biggest massacre that's ever been. A bit like what they've done, when they say what they've done, it's always been Serbia going to war with either Croatia, Bosnia, Kosovo, and Slovenia and Macedonia and Montenegro. They removed themselves quite lightly actually from being victims of war as well. So they felt it, but they weren't really at war like we were. So long story short, we got hit really badly, got sent to the mountains to be massacred, and it was going to be the biggest massacre that's ever been. And without spoiling the book too much, my uncle, bless his soul, he bribed the government to set free the town for the last time, the last chance, and lo and behold, it worked. But there is a very important thing. My uncle, bless him, so you can imagine my dad is a doctor and my uncle was a farmer, just to bring a bit of light into the story. And when he decided to bribe, basically to bribe the army for the sake of saving all the souls of the town, my dad said to my uncle, brother, don't go negotiate with them. They're going to kill you on the spot. And lo and behold, because he's a farmer, he's used to negotiation. He managed to do it. He was so clever. But then he used to tease my dad. It's like, to my dad, brother, so you're the one with the brains, and I'm the one that wins in it. But having said that, my dad was, he was really a huge doctor and everybody respected him so greatly. He didn't earn much, but my uncle on the other side was just a farmer, and he was one of the richest guys in Balkan. Thankfully, because he managed to spare our life, he gave all of his wealth to the soldiers that night just to save the town. And to this day, he's considered a real hero in the town, which I'd love to take you to one day, Gilles.
I'd love to come. So
Yeah.
quite a few paradox there. Your dad was a doctor, yet he was less well off financially. Your uncle was a farmer, but he was a rich man. Your dad would have been naturally, in some minds, the person who would have negotiated.
Yep.
But actually, it's your uncle who managed to do that. Life is full of mysteries. So how did you come about? Because the story you're telling us is quite a poignant one, and I'm sure you're going to go and share with us a little bit more dark things that happened. How did you move from having such a difficult story to deciding to share it with the world in this magnificent book, Unbroken, Survivor of Human Trafficking by Lurata Lyon? How did you get there?
I'm smiling because I've been waiting almost like a lifetime to say this. So here I was in London, and I met the most incredible man, and I shared my story with him for the first time. Nobody knew my story besides the government and the doctors that helped me stay sane, because I needed a lot of help to begin with. And I found myself completely lost, not knowing what to do with my career due to an old injury from being trafficked and being beaten up. I lost the very business that I loved the most, which was in the fitness industry. I lost it because I was losing my legs and I couldn't really walk anymore. I was getting paralyzed. And I was sitting with this amazing human being, and he saw my future before I did. It's him, it's Gilles. And he said to me, he sat down and he said, "Do you know what gift you have inside of you, Lurata?" And I didn't know what he meant. He saw it before me because he's just an angel walking in this earth. And I was meant to cross paths with Gilles, my mentor, my friend. And he said to me, "This story must be told." I remember this like so firmly. I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean Gilles told?" He's like, let me tell you something. He said, "You need to go to public speakers. You need to become a public speaker." And I'm like, what is he going on about? And lo and behold, he saw my future before I did. He guided me, he mentored me to become a public speaking coach, a public speaker, motivational speaker. And then he also mentioned this right at the beginning. He said, "You've got to do a book." I said, "I will never do a book. I'm not comfortable sharing my story." He said, "Yes, but what if it's a product to help charity?" And I just had this light bulb moment. I looked at Gilles in tears, and I realized that all this pain that I went through, it was a gift to share with the world, so I could inspire, potentially save someone's life, potentially inspire someone to make a different choices in life, and ultimately just raise funds for charities that support human trafficking and all the organizations that go out there and risk their lives to save these poor children, women and adults in human trafficking. So thank you, Gilles, for believing in me before I did, because without you, I genuinely wouldn't have done this book. So this book is thanks to Gilles, everybody. This book changed my world, and Gilles changed my life.
I wasn't expecting that answer. I was.
No? Well, it's not rehearsed.
I wasn't expecting, but I think there are lots of people who contributed to you getting there. But thank you. I feel humbled, but I think you had so much in you, and it was clear to me, it was clear to Nadia when she met you. You had so much in you, and the only thing that you had that was preventing you from being the amazing person you are was this imposter syndrome. And there's so many people who have that. So could you tell us a little bit about that? How did it manifest when you were doubting yourself and your superpowers?
Well, how can I say this so everyone can relate to it? I realized that war doesn't have to be the war that we know, like guns and fighting. War could mean anything like restlessness in your own home, abuse, bullying, whatever it might be that you might have faced as someone you know is going through. So if that kind of stuff is inflicted in you, even from a young age, if you've been told you're not good enough or anything like that, because I've been working with people and it's a pattern. So it's very normal for people that have been told they're not good enough or something's happened to them to doubt themselves. And I learned this very, very quickly, to doubt myself, because everything that I was going through was leading me to trouble, and I really thought I was the cause of it, which it wasn't. It was just meant to be. And how did I then make myself sort of retract and retrain myself? It was all down to starting with believing in myself, and that really boils down to forgiveness. One way or another, we all have something in our lifetime, maybe something we've done or we've said, or something that's happened to us, or we reacted to it, because a reaction, it's sometimes impulsive. And as long as we can forgive ourselves with whatever that we might have done or been through, then we are able to be the bigger people to forgive externally by starting with the next person next to you and so on. I think forgiveness really helped me regain. Once I understood what forgiveness meant, it wasn't just like, oh, I'll just forgive myself. It really took a lot of courage and persistence. By forgiving myself for the pain maybe that it caused my parents, forgiving myself, caused my parents because I was taken, although I wasn't the one that caused it, but still I felt like I did. Forgiving myself for wanting to die and not live anymore. Why did I have those thoughts? Just little things like that. And then I slowly started forgiving myself about everything that I felt guilt about, and ultimately then I started practicing that when things like, if somebody was to, and actually you taught me this, when somebody in the street, and London is a really busy kind of, whoever has been in London will know, and it lives in a big city, can get really quite busy, and people are rushed to places, and sometimes you bump into someone and they turn around and they effing and blinding at you. And for me, my instant reaction was to respond in the same manner. And it didn't take me long to be triggered with anger, because, or as a result of what I've been through. So learning to, thank you Gilles for this as well, you've taught me so much on this, learning to just breathe, stop, breathe for a second, and let that boiling calm down and say, actually, they are having a bad day and it's nothing to do with me. And these little steps, sometimes you complete it, sometimes you fail, you know, like you're probably not as successful at pursuing it. But if you just continue to practice even those little small steps, you'll find them before you know it, it becomes a habit, and then it just becomes a way of life. But it has taken ages to get to this level of forgiveness and Zen, and we're all resilient. I think we all have it in us. There is not something that we don't have. We as humans are meant, from the moment we are born, is the resilience we face, you know, it's instantly, everything.
So you're an international speaker, and you're also a coach, and you've been living across Europe, you've been living in Asia, and as you're coaching people, you teach them communication, and you teach them to use the tools of communication to improve their lives or to resolve conflicts. A little earlier on when we were talking, you talked about a situation that, you know, probably people can face every day and not realize. And I was really taken by the way you managed that situation in the train, in the tube. Would you like to share that with us again? With that gentleman?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, gosh, I didn't realize you were taken by this story, but I think it's, previously it would be fight and fright kind of situation. And I think most people, it's so easy to judge people nowadays, you know, we judge so quickly, and we judge a book by its cover. But I say, try and channel your inner. We are getting into the instinct, the gut feeling. This is what we're going with this story. So over the years, I've learned that my gut feeling has never really let me down, and it's really gotten stronger because I am more open to listening to it. But this one day in London, I actually challenged my own gut feeling. I know, probably you're thinking, what was she saying? Well, I was on the train, I was taking Piccadilly line, which is our blue line that goes towards Heathrow. And it's so funny, I do some tests sometimes. I'm a bit like a mad person. So the train is approaching, and I've got two carriages at the end, and I'm thinking, do I take the last carriage or do I take the one before last? My gut feeling is telling me, go on this one on the left-hand side. My mind on the other side is going, oh, come on, don't listen to it, go over here. It's because we always have internal dialogue, don't we, Gilles?
Yes, we do.
There's constant internal dialogue, and I think that's something that I'd love to talk about as well. So I decided to completely ignore my gut feeling, go on to the next carriage, and I sat down. But as soon as I sat down, I realized that something was really off about it. And so I sit down and I look around, and I can only see 2 other people in the whole train carriage. And I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting. I see a boy, a young chap, just sitting there completely fidgety and not quite himself, had his hoodie on and looking through the hoodie, and it's like, which is fine, people can wear hoodies, I'm not discriminating, I'm not judging, but just, it made me aware. My whole alarm bells were going, and I knew now my gut feeling told me go here, and I listened to my mind. And so I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, and now you have to imagine I was sitting completely as I am sitting now, Zen, no anger, just complete pureness, Zen, like Buddha. And I'm literally looking at the guy, because I do martial art, and in martial art you have, as soon as you feel danger, you have to assess what's the next step, so you are ahead of the danger. And I knew I was potentially in danger, but I wasn't sure what's going to happen. So I'm looking at the guy, and the guy has gotten this bag, and he starts fiddling with the bag, and I'm thinking, and knife crime has been really huge in London.
Yes.
Most recently. So the first thing I thought, knife. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So he pulls out these gloves, and the gloves were black and rubber gloves. And it didn't look right. Gloves. And I decided to speak to him. Oh, I said, you've got really nice gloves. And he looked at me with a death stare, as if to say, excuse me, what? I said, are they for climbing? And he looked at me and he said, no, these are to kill people. And you can imagine anybody would have been like either getting into confrontation with him and saying, what the heck would you mean? So in that situation, I laughed. Whether it was a nervous laugh, I don't know. But that was my instinct to laugh. And he looked at me as if to say, what's she laughing about? I must have looked mad to him. I said, oh, that's so funny. I said, honestly, are they for climbing? I said, because I have 2 kids and my kids love climbing. And he's still looking at me completely puzzled. But what I also noticed that on his leg, he had a brace, like a prison tracker. So I already worked it out. It's obviously a release from prison. He's on kind of perimeter. I don't know how they work, but clearly it wasn't a guy that meant well. And telling me the gloves are for killing, that really, I was a bit shaken, I have to say, with all the training in the world. And I said, no, come on. I said, you know, those gloves are brilliant. I should get it for my kids. My kids love climbing, rock climbing. Maybe they should do like free climbing with those gloves. You know what? If you climb the mountain with the rock with them, and when you get to the top, this is me talking to him like random. I said, I bet, you know, when you get to the top of that hill, the freedom that you feel. And what I was trying to say to him is that I was trying to change his mindset, whatever was in his mind. I was completely deferring him to a completely different mindset, thinking more positively. So I was using when you climb the mountain and when you get to the top, and the freedom and the success you feel of climbing whatever you are climbing. I mean, and the guy was, to my surprise, he was really puzzled with me. He was like, what the heck is she going on about? He took his gloves off at this point. But then again, we reached the next station, which was up in the open because it's all underground. And I waited to the last minute what the train is going to do, whether the doors are going to shut, whether the boy is going to go or I'm going to go. As I walk off, I said, God bless you. And I walked off onto the platform and the doors shut and he continued looking at me. I didn't feel particularly safe at all. And this is me that's been through a lot and me that can potentially defend myself. But it made me think that mindset and being able to defer situations, right, to soothe the situation rather than to add fuel was very important in that particular moment. So the gut feeling when your gut feeling is telling you something, please listen to it, because we, and this is really important, we are not born with skills. Skills can be learned at school, skills can be learned anywhere, football, whatever you choose. But we are all, and I mean this with a full meaning, we are all born with instinct. And I think over the years, life and this really sort of, the life we live in, which is quite modern now and it's all like computerized, has been designed to detach us from that gut feeling. Because if you look back in generations from when humans existed, they used the gut feeling for hunting, they used everything. They didn't have skills, they learned the skills while they were hunting. But it was the gut feeling that told them if it was safe or not. They probably sometimes even came back without any catch, without catching a prey. So please channel your gut feeling. That's my must do it.
In just a short time, you've given us so many insights, so many wise words of a coach. You said that early on in your life, you tended to give back the energy that people would give you. So if somebody was angry at you, you would be angry at them. And then you had the events that we know, and you learned to forgive. And forgiving yourself first before forgiving others. And these are other lessons for us to take in. All the way to this particular event of how to actually manage and diffuse conflict in a situation that could have been extremely dangerous to you. You were very calm. You broke the ice at some stage, if I can call it that way, by laughing, and always with calm and goodwill towards the other person, just diffusing the very danger that was there. I take a lot away from this, and I take also the fact that under stress, being calm, being armed with martial arts, being positive, being completely in control of your own feelings or your own gut feel and instinct, you have been able to go through this situation, and I'm sure a lot. So I'll have a few more questions before we come to the end of the podcast. But this book, what does it actually mean to your life nowadays? I know people are asking you for the book everywhere in the world and asking you more and more to come and speak about your story. What does it actually mean to your life from now going onwards?
I once wanted to just, I said to my dad once, and this is, I have to tell this story because I was speaking with my dad just before to come to the book, and what my dad said and what actually, it's all sort of, it's like a chain of events. I was having a conversation with my dad. I don't know if anyone is listening at the age of 17. Imagine yourself having that conversation where, oh, what am I going to do with my life? What is it that I want to become? Or people that already are in their jobs, and what were you thinking at that time? And I was actually having a conversation with my dad, and my dad said, I'm just curious. He says, what is it that you want to be when you grow older? He knew deep inside I was never going to go to university because war was on our doorstep. But he still tried to make it as normal as possible, these conversations. I was the only child as well. And I said, Dad, you know what? I really would love to be a doctor like you. And actually he was surprised because I was always intrigued with space and time, and I was studying technical engineering, and from doctor to technical engineering kind of, he just looked at me puzzled. He said, really, why? He said, is it the uniform? And if you think it's that we get paid, well, we don't. As you know, we are not very well off. No, I said, Dad, it's nothing to do with uniform or getting paid. I said, I've been observing you over the years. It's just how you help people. And he looked at me and he sat me down and he's like, dear Lurata. He said, you might never become a doctor. And I was like, what? He doesn't believe in me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Questioning myself. But no, I think my dad was trying to save me One, the disappointment, because I wasn't going to make it into the doctoral university. But also, he wanted to give me a lesson for life. A very wise man. He said, do you know what? He said, I've learned something in life, and remember this. He said, you will remember this when it happens, when you will use it when it's needed the most. And this word will die with me, and I'm trying to share it with everyone so I don't take this wealth to grave with me. He said, Lurata, if helping others is what you want, he said, you don't have to be a doctor. I was like, what, really? He said, yes. He said, you'll see, you'll find a way. He said, because you are basing it on helping others. There is so many ways you can help others. I still doubted. I thought I wasn't good enough, and my dad just wanted to be polite. When I came to the UK and I started doing coaching in fitness industry, and then potentially moving to public speaking and presentation skills, and doing the book, as per your question asked, all I wanted to do my entire life, I was born and designed to make a difference to others. I was literally sent onto this earth to help in one way or another. Yeah. And so it's in my DNA, is been printed way before I was born. So with the book, where do we go from this? For me, it's about making a difference to others. Yes, I want to raise funds for the charities that support Stop Human Trafficking. And yes, I want to inspire. But I don't want to just use the book. I want to use my life lessons as well. The book is one thing, but the life lessons, I want to share all the lessons I learned. So moving forward, I think just focusing on potentially doing a documentary and just sharing this with the world, not necessarily scaring people or anything, just educating and making people aware, bringing some light to reality, because I think we are so consumed by the fake news, as they call it, or just the news that doesn't really make us grow, just installs so much fear in us. And I don't want this to be fear. I want this to be as a knowledge, so we are wiser, and so we can make better decisions, so we can then lecture our future generations. So have I answered your question?
Yes, completely.
Gilles?
Completely. So how often do you, so I know a few years ago when you were in Asia, in Singapore, it seemed to me that every time we were calling you, you were off to another speaking engagement.
Yeah.
Do you continue to speak on a regular basis?
Absolutely, I'm still continuing, which I really appreciated. And to be honest, Asia was really supportive of me because, as you remember, I finished public speakers coaching sessions, training, and I got qualified and all that. But then we moved to Asia and I set up my business in public speaking and presentation skills. And then because I use storytelling as an example of how to relate to the audience and how you can then use your own life stories, not necessarily personal stories, but it could be work stories. I then started sharing my story just as a demonstration. I never intended to tell my story as feel sorry for me or anything like that. But when I was sharing the story and I realized it was reaching people in a different perspective, I thought, oh gosh, there is really a great need for me to do this. So yes, Asia was great. I mean, some of the highlights of Asia, it was once when I got invited to speak in Thailand by WPP, Sir Martin Sorrell, and that was a real privilege. I got invited twice to speak at their event, and now I continue in the UK and globally. I mean, there is no many places that I haven't been, and now I've touched base in Senegal as well, which I'm really grateful.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We're going to come to an end to this first podcast. What are 3 lessons that you would like to share from your life experience, from your coaching experience, from your public speaking experience? 3, maybe lesson is not the word, but 3 messages, 3 thoughts that you would like to share with the audience.
Well, based on my life, I would say being a victim of anything, and I mean this, of anything, it's never a choice. But being a survivor of whatever you've been through, it's a choice. And you really have a choice. So you can either remain a victim forever, or you can say, do you know what? Enough, lesson learned, let me take these lessons and now I'm going to be a survivor. Secondly, I would say, whatever you want to do, do it as soon as possible because time flies. I just wish I'd done the book a lot sooner. If only I knew that, I could reach people with such great positivity. And thirdly is, we all want to leave a legacy, right? We all want to leave this legacy. But legacy is not building another school or building another company or being wealthy or anything, because no one will ever remember how wealthy you are, but people will remember how you made them feel. So if you were to make any different choices in life, just always remember what I said. How are you making others feel? That's your legacy.
Lurata Lyon, thank you so very much. What a deep and moving interview.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we chose you as our first guest, and we'll be inviting you again. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Stay tuned. We'll have more to share with you, to bring to you from all over the world. We come to a close to this first podcast. Thank you and goodbye. Stay blessed.
God bless.